this video, I'm going to guide you on how to hire a professional designer, what to look for, what to know in advance, and what questions to ask them, so you ensure a relationship that's a dream come true and not a nightmare. So how do you know when it's time to hire a designer in the first place? That might be the first question to get into. And I would say there's basically three ways. One, maybe you've reached a point where the thing that you need is beyond your skill set. Maybe you want to have a website that's just more in depth than what you want to put together yourself on something like Squarespace with a template, or you want, new branding for your company, but it's just beyond what you can do. So that's the first indicator of why you want to hire a professional. The second is you have the money to hire a professional and you want to just hand that part off to someone else. And the third reason would be if you're wanting to develop new branding for your business, or maybe freshen up what you have, and you want someone that's really a pro that can think about and consider all the aspects of that, from your target audience to how you're going to get people to find you and all that kind of stuff. That makes sense to hire a professional. And what steps should you take before you make the move to finding a designer? Well, first would be around really getting clear on who your ideal client or customer is going to be, because that's going to be one of the first questions that a designer should be asking you. So understanding who you're trying to reach with the thing that you're designing, whether it's a business card or a flyer or your website or an app or whatever, you want to have a really clear idea of your target audience, what their age is, where they're located, where they're at in life, do they work, are they parents, whatever is relevant to your type of client and what it is that you're offering. You want to have a clear idea of that. The other thing you want to have a clear idea of is the timeline. What's your project due date, when you want to have things done, or at least the first thing done, because that's certainly going to be something that a designer asks you straight off the bat. Another thing you want to consider is your brand personality. So do you want to look more conservative and clean and corporate, or do you want to have kind of more of a texturized, tangible, like grassroots, organic looking site? Do you want something that's feminine? Do you want something that looks more kid-like or playful? Like, what is the tone or personality of your brand based on who you're trying to reach? Because knowing that really helps a designer go a long way towards understanding the typography to use, the colors, the imagery, all that kind of stuff. So if you know that up front, it's going to help things go a lot more smoothly for the designer, because it's going to remove a lot of that guesswork that can go on whenever there's not quite clarity on either side as to what you're trying to create and who you're creating it for. So then the next thing becomes, where are you going to look for a designer? My hands down number one recommendation for that is to start offline. And by that I mean ask your friends, or if there's places or people or websites that you love, ask them who their designer is. Who do they use? A lot of times if there's a website that you think looks wonderful, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see, web design by, and you can check it out that way. But looking for either whose design that you like, and then asking them who their designer was, or checking it on their website, or just asking friends. That's so helpful because you get an understanding of the style of relationship of working with a designer, and how that person's experience was. So you'll know that the person you might be considering is responsive, they are professional, they understand what they're doing, all that stuff that you can't tell if you're just randomly searching online for a designer, right? The second place you can look is there's a lot of aggregate sites that freelance contractors, designers, and developers post on. Examples would be like elance.com or upwork.com or Odesk. There's several of them out there. You can just search, find a designer, and probably one of them will pop up. And these are sites that aggregate a lot of different freelancers from around the world. And that can be one place. You'll find a range of skill level there. And it's not as easy to understand, the communication style of the person you might be inviting to bid on your project, but you can go by their ratings on those sites, and that helps a bit. Kind of like ratings on Amazon or something, you can kind of go by who's rated highly, and you can sort of see their hourly rate. So that can be one other way to do it. A third way to do it would be to do a local search. So go to Google and just type in, online designer, online marketer, graphic designer in your local area. Now the thing with that is that you don't necessarily need to be local. And sometimes I think people maybe by default might think that they should just look locally. Only one or two of my clients are local. I'd say 90% of the time in all of my 12 plus years of being a professional designer, have I worked with people locally. All my relationships are virtual. Now it's important to me to meet the person I'm working with, at least at some point. I try once a year to meet with my clients and do stuff in person, because it's just a lot more fun to do stuff in person. But you don't need to have somebody local to be meeting with all the time. In fact, that actually can just waste more time, because with video and everything else these days, it's just not even necessary. So I'd say local is kind of the last option for where you might find somebody. Now, a recommendation, if you're finding a designer or a couple of designers that might be options for you, my recommendation is to try something small first, a small job of some sort. Now, this is more important if you're looking to find a designer that's going to help you long term, like someone that's going to become a collaborator in your business. Then it's really important to do the due diligence and find someone that you like working with and start with a small job to figure that out. Or maybe you have 2 or 3 candidates that you like, and a small job would be great. So some little thing like a business card or whatever, some test job that you pay them for, so you get a little bit of investment up front, but you learn a lot in that process. And that's really worth the time if you're looking for, a collaborator long term. Otherwise, if it's a one-off project, that may not be necessary. Now, an indicator here is if you're finding a couple designers, first of all, I would recommend never ask for spec work. And what spec work is to ask a designer, hey, can you design this for me for free? And if I like it, then I'll hire you to finish it or whatever. A professional designer is not going to do that. They're just going to not take on spec work because a professional designer is usually quite busy and they have plenty of paid work, so it wouldn't make any sense to do something for free just to try to get a job, right? So if you find someone that's really excited to, sure, I'll do spec work for you, they're probably not your highest quality professional. So that's just a little indicator there for you. And finally, I would say when you're going through your candidates and looking to work with a designer, I would ask them about how they price things. So some designers price per hour, some give a flat rate, some have different packages and, kind of a la carte offerings. So everyone's different, and it would be helpful to know the way you feel comfortable working. But asking this up front, before you get to the stage of making a proposal or requesting a proposal, is so important because then you know if you're even should continue. For instance, I work with a flat rate price for all my projects. I don't like to do hourly, but that's just a personal preference and something that I've gotten to over time, and not everybody is going to be that way. So you're going to get a range of pricing with your proposals anyway, but understanding up front how someone works, and also asking them, should your project go out of scope? When is that point? How do you guys handle that? A lot of times when I'm working on projects, especially if it's something new, as we get going, we get other ideas, we get excited, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do this. Well, if you haven't already set up front when that kind of first phase ends and the next one might begin, or when you're going to have a conversation and invoice for the first part and have that part complete and move on, if you haven't discussed that ahead of time, that can get a little squirrely. So avoiding all of that from the beginning when you're not, engaged in any way, when there's no money on the table, it makes it so much easier to cover this stuff and avoid some sort of nightmare down the road. So anyway, thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate you listening to me on these tips on how to work with a professional designer and how to find a professional designer. If you like this video, I'd love a thumbs up. And you can find more tips about working with designers, as well as design and online marketing and things like that at my website at techdivamedia.com. And you can also find more of my videos on my channel here. Thanks again.